Hi and welcome to Counting Coral Chats. I'm Jolien Collier and I will be your host for today's interview. Here at Counting Coral, we like to reach out and interview people from all walks of life. Some folks are about ocean conservation and others can be marine biologists, scientists, and just your average person doing extraordinary things. Hi and welcome to Counting Coral Chats with Lara Seaver. Lara is the Director of Projects at Reverb, and Reverb is a non-profit working on environmental and social causes in the music industry. She handles Reverb's work on tours, festivals, and special projects. She came to Reverb in 2011 after 13 years in radio, directing promotions and a morning show, and she lives in Portland, Maine, USA, where Reverb is headquartered. Good morning, Lara. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us, and really looking forward to this interview because you guys are just doing some incredible stuff in the music industry. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the story of Reverb and how that was inspired as a non-profit, and how to just lead us through that messaging and that story of Reverb.
Absolutely. So the immediate origins are not my personal story, but Reverb's a small nonprofit. There are 8 of us in the office total, including our founders, Adam and Lauren. And so we all work out of very close quarters in our office typically, and now our very close quarter video calls. So Adam and Lauren are a married couple. Adam is in a band called Guster. They've been nationally touring for close to 30 years. And Lauren was working for environmental nonprofits. So they were living very conscientiously at home. They were very much aware of climate issues and social issues, and very down to recycling and the things that we were doing in the 90s. And Adam was realizing how much that didn't reflect what he was doing on the road, and how jarring it felt to go on the road where everything's kind of a disposable industry, where you're in a different city every night. So he talked to his friends who were in bands that were playing to even bigger audiences, like the Dave Matthews Band. And they were like, yeah, we agree, but what can you do about it? It's just the nature of what we're trying to do here. And after having that conversation over and over, Adam and Lauren decided to try to figure out what you can do about it. So in 2004, the band Bare Naked Ladies agreed to be guinea pigs for Reverb, and Lauren herself went out on the road doing 2 different things, both trying to make the footprint of the tour and the artist's experience in every city as green as possible, as light on the environment as possible. And then also figuring out the best way to connect with fans, because we've seen this for a long time, and you've probably seen it yourself if you've been to shows, where you walk in and there's maybe a local organization or a national organization sitting there behind a card table trying to talk to people, or maybe just a sad person sitting behind the table. It's a little bit jarring. It just doesn't fit. So Lauren has really worked quite hard since then, and with the team, to bring together a program that can allow fans to engage with causes at shows in a way that feels like it adds to their experience. So those 2 pieces of the work that Reverb did, both in connecting local and national causes that the artist cares about to fans out in the concourse, and also taking care of the backstage footprint, are really the pillars of Reverb's work through this day.
That's amazing. That's kind of one of the things of concert culture is, you have tailgate parties, you have t-shirt vendors, you have all these nice experiences that you can have, and that's just another connection to the audience to say, hey, well, there's another thing going on over here that you can now participate in and engage your audience in that messaging that you guys have worked so hard to get across. Now, you guys work with some pretty high profile musicians. How do you get to work with these guys? Is it because they were on tour and you just meet in these bands, or is it like a reach out program where you're saying, look guys, there's a massive issue going on here, would you support us? Or is it just people coming to you? How does that work?
It's a combination of everything. So after that 2004 tour with Bare Naked Ladies, in 2005, the Dave Matthews Band actually became that first, they've just been such a pillar and partner for every single tour they've done since then. And it really was kind of a leap of faith at first, but has become such a strong partnership and program that it's integrated and all of the fans expect to see us at every show. Soon after that, Maroon 5 joined, and Adam being in a band that has worked with many of these artists, that knows many of them, was certainly helpful with networking to begin with. And he's able to, and all of us, I guess, coming from that music and logistic world, we're able to talk about things in the right language to work with these tours, if that makes sense. So, sometimes working with a nonprofit organization, they're speaking a different language than the roadies on the road. So we know how to work within and do these programs on their tour without adding more work to someone's plate, without asking for the wrong things, without just being an additional burden. Instead, we can handle this piece of it. And artists do have causes they're passionate about, but not all of them want to be Bono. And I love Bono, so that's not in any way a disparagement, but not all of them want to integrate that as such a large part of the show. They don't feel like that's part of the art that they're showing their fans. This gives them an outlet to say, yes, I want to support local farms, and you're going to meet farmers at my show on your way in. So fans are able to, grab a drink, grab a snack, wander through and talk to local organizations, win prizes, sign petitions, spin a prize wheel, make it, it's kind of that engaging carnival feel, but you're actually doing good things. And then hopefully you've met someone there, you've learned something that you're taking back to your daily life. That.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I don't know how this works, but I would imagine reaching out to the musicians, like you say, you're speaking the same language, essentially. You're musicians talking to musicians. It's not a business person or a non-profit speaking to musicians. But you have venues that might be resisting those issues. So the musician's like, yeah, I'm on board, let's do it. I'll sign me up. Where do I, how do we do this? And then you got the big organizations that run these events. Is that more challenging than the musicians themselves? Or is it kind of a balance between the two of like, we're trying really hard with the musicians and the arenas are working with us, but the musicians aren't, or vice versa? How does that work?
Well, it helps to have the musicians on our side when we go talk to the promoters and the venues. Many of them do care very much about these issues, but again, the policies and the way things work are just the way things work. It's very dependent on bottled water and plastic straws and disposable and easy and trash. And perhaps you're in a city like Nashville where recycling isn't really a thing, or New Orleans where it's difficult. And so it's about working with these venues to say, hey, this is important to a growing number of artists who are willing to put their time and their money behind these causes. And it's much easier to team with the musicians and go to the venues saying over and over again, for example, in Nashville, there's the Bridgestone Arena. I believe we're on track to go there 11 times this year with various tours. It's just one of those stops everyone was hitting. And therefore that message gets repeated to them over and over. And we have what we call a rider, which is in addition to their musician's contract, where we ask for certain things, water refill stations backstage, recycling and all of those other pieces. And they're seeing that over and over. So they get used to, oh, this is a Reverb tour. We know we have to do X, Y, and Z. And those things start to become easier to do than not do. And they just start to become part of the venue's practice in the best case scenario. We also have some artists, Jack Johnson's a great example of one, who will consider the environment before even booking a show, which is taking that next stand. He asks arenas and amphitheaters to make sure they commit to 3 out of these 5 environmental pieces. He makes sure that they will not be selling bottled water at any of their shows. And he does all of these things before he'll even sign a contract to play the gig. And that's next level. And we have more and more artists interested in doing that as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant, because much to that word of tour, I mean, you're going to these places repetitive, in a repetitive kind of fashion. So you can make a choice to say, if you got weight behind you, like with all these big stars saying, we're just not going to tour there. And, if you don't start stepping up, you're going to lose revenue through us. And that's a great message to be able to have that power and that weight behind you with musicians, and that repetitiveness of being there all the time selling the message. And it will change over time. You know, every tour will start adopting these behaviors because you just have to at some point, because there's too much revenue and money involved to not listen to the artists that are producing all these people showing up. So that's brilliant. Now, obviously, the COVID is hitting everybody really hard. Your business model is essentially meeting people, big concerts, you know, tens of thousands of people showing up. That's obviously just stopped in its tracks. So what are you guys doing to keep your momentum as a nonprofit, or keep, or maybe not so much as a nonprofit, but that messaging? How does that work for you guys right now? I mean, you've been in it for probably 8 months now, maybe 9 months.
It's true. 2020 was going to be our biggest year ever. There was a lot of momentum around climate issues. When COVID hit, we had just started 2 major concert tours with Tame Impala and Billie Eilish. Both of those kicked off on March 9th. We were on the road with the Lumineers. We had just done our first UK Ireland full complete run with the 1975. So we already had a really busy time when it's not, I mean, normally, obviously summer is the concert season. And we were doing a lot of work already in 2020 when it hit. So yeah, that was super disruptive. There were artists that were coming on board this summer we had never worked with before, as well as artists that we've been working with every year since 2004 or 5. And to have to shift and start coming up with not only new programs, but new ways to fund those programs. And being a nonprofit, we're just trying to continue the mission-based work. So when you're not actually out there raising funds and passing to other nonprofits and shining a spotlight on those causes, what does it look like? And it has been about giving artists voices to talk about climate issues, ways to talk about it, and still keeping with the Reverb ethos of making that fun and engaging. So Quarantine Kitchen is one of our programs where we have artists cook a sustainable recipe, whether that's using local foods, vegan and vegetarian recipes, of course. And it's a little cooking show hosted by my boss, Adam. So he's a musician, he's stuck at home. All of these musicians have been off the road for the first time, for the longest of their lives. It's really an intense experience for them. And so, you know, what are they cooking in the kitchen? And it could be something that you used to make in your college dorm, which we had one of those, which was like a scrambled egg with potato chip type dish, or like a really complicated vegan chicken and waffles that you're just really good at. And the musicians getting to talk about what their lives are like, it really makes an authentic experience while also talking about the environmental pieces of what's going on there. So we have all those episodes available. That's just been kind of a fun one. On a more serious note, we have a campaign called Unchange It, Fighting Climate Change, music's climate campaign. In the past, we've always worked with artists on environmental platforms and causes that are important to them, but it's been a little bit siloed. So this artist cares about this piece of it or wants to focus on that this year, and this artist is doing this. And there are programs that run across, but maybe not through all. And this pause has allowed us to take those voices and really put them together and give it one focus. So a piece of that is a really robust website that we'll be launching for Unchange It that allows, whether you're a fan, you're an artist, you're a venue, you want to do something about it, going to the website and giving you first steps, next steps, ways to use your voice, ways to change small things in your daily life, and going beyond the things that we've all heard, use a reusable bottle or ride your bike to work, those kind of things, but really making more authentic connections about climate issues with people. So that online platform will mirror a campaign that will go on tour with the artists when they resume touring, and asking artists to send their fans to take these actions, whether it's writing to your government representative or making small donations to fight carbon. Any of those pieces will be kind of spelled out so it's accessible, rewarded with prizes because it's fun, and something that we can all do from home. So still using music's voice to get the word out, but thankfully we have the technology to do so.
No, that's brilliant because, you know, we're in the same boat as a nonprofit when it comes to coral conservation. And, you know, we speak to lots of marine biologists and scientists all over the world. And the messaging seems to always fall in the same bracket that not everybody is speaking to each other. And it's a really frustrating thing because much to your point, you're designing a platform where everyone can speak, and one guy might be into veganism, one might be into trees, one might be into coral conservation and or coral restoration, all the rest of it. Smashing them all together really does help, because then that opens up a dialogue for more expansive viewpoints and ways that we can actually team together on the larger issues. Because what we find is the small issues just kind of cap out at a certain point. And you can't expand past that without these open dialogues. And people are honestly screaming from the rooftops for that. So I commend you guys for trying to put that together. It's a really kind of brilliant thing that you could do for all these people coming together and people looking into it and wanting to be a part of it. So yeah, we thank you for that. It's brilliant.
Of course, we actually sort of internally refer to it as the bat signal in some ways. When there's a cause or a message or something urgent, certainly in the last 4 years, there's been a lot of opportunity to petition to save national parks and other pieces that have come under stress or risk. And sending up that bat signal to the musicians and the coalition that we've built has been super powerful, because we have tens and hundreds of thousands of music fans connected to Reverb. But once you start talking about all of our artist partners, we added it up recently and it's over 1 billion. When you talk to all of those audiences. So
once it's all connected, you've got 1 billion people.
Exactly.
That's amazing. I mean, that's how the message gets out there. That's how people can, really make change. So that's fantastic. I really appreciate it. And kind of to that point, like, the world has slowed down, right? So it's a really, it's kind of like a balance thing where you say, well, the world has slowed down. Is this now a reset for humanity? And is it a reset for nature? We've seen nature just bouncing back phenomenally, but we've also seen some, negative stuff to the COVID when it comes to nature, especially with policies being rolled back and stuff like that. Do you think that when we gear up to being human again and our experience, that we're actually going to pay attention and maybe not go into it like we did before? And much like the concert thing, this could be a good reset to say, hey, we're not doing it the same anymore. This is completely different. And we are going to push that model, because we're not doing business as usual anymore. And it's really hard to change business as usual and stop that wheel from turning. But when the wheel stopped and it starts to turn again, you can make change. Do you think that's possible for us as a human race and nature as a whole, and also in the music industry?
I think I'll answer those in reverse, because I don't know that I can speak for the human race. I mean, that's an optimistic and certainly something that helps us sleep at night, is that we're doing this now and we're paused and everyone is suffering in one way or another and losing something for the idea that we could reset. But I do think there's a lot of pent up energy and angst and willingness to just want to go back to how it was. I think most people, maybe not all, but most people would be excited to push a button that would send us right back to how it was 6 months ago. So how do we take this pause within the music industry? We're hoping to, again, gather the coalition of voices that we can, when things are booked and ready and tours are actually, we have a date where we're going back, have those conversations up front about those needs and make it uniform. So yes, we hope that that's a piece that that can be tackled, and we can use this opportunity. Of course, you're also looking at an industry that's been shut down and not making, from its major revenue stream, is touring. And at that point, musicians are trying to, on a smaller scale, just be sustainable business people for their crews and keeping people employed. So there's definitely a little bit of there's more than one factor at play, but I think that there's an opportunity there for sure within the music industry. And humanity-wise, I hope that people are realizing, for example, the level of travel that can be cut down on with video calls now that everyone is much more comfortable with that. The idea that we can all be safer with telehealth as opposed to having to be in person for some simple conversations and needs, and grocery delivery and curbside and all of those pieces. I feel like those are really great additions to society that can allow us to move forward. Because the other thing that I think we're realizing, that even with the vaccine, we're not going to go from a lot of risk to zero risk overnight. it's going to be a gradual process. So some of the good that we can keep to keep us safe and still try to get back to some of these bigger things. Yeah, there's potential there.
Yeah, that was a big question.
It
How's humanity going to be in the next 10 years?
What do you think? Do you think humanity's changed?
It's a real tough one. It's much to your point. We could either just go, from 0 to 60 right back to where we went, where we were at, or we can just take that time to understand we don't need to go to 0 to 60 to regain this control over our normality. Because I think when people are confronted with normality or routine and it's interrupted, we really do have a hard time and we struggle immensely with it, especially in the Western, more first world cultures, because we're on hyperdrive, right? Third world cultures, maybe not so much. They are, they're kind of more back to basics anyway. We're not. We're being pulled back to basics where we have to sit with ourselves and actually have to listen to the dialogue, where we were so distracted with running off to Starbucks, doing coffee, doing concerts, doing this, running in your car, going from a job to babysitters. Our lives are mad and very exciting and passionate and full of joy, right? To a certain extent. And now we've been slammed. We're all indoors, having to listen to our thoughts. And I think people are going a little bit crazy. But I just hope, and I sincerely hope, people take the time to just re-engage in life in a bit more of a mindful manner, so we can take these issues to heart, because we've got time to think about it now. We have time to think about what our impacts are on the environment, because every time we step out that door, we have an impact somehow in the way we live, right? So that's kind of my feeling. I can only pray we just slowly go into this, the reopening, and enjoy it for what it is and be thankful. Because once you've got something taken away, you realize how precious that was. And then when you go back into it, you're actually more thankful that you can be able to go to a concert. Just the simple things in life, right? So speaking of concerts, do you think concerts are going to be like part of normal life again, or is there such a thing? Do you ever think we can get to that at this point, or are we all going to be in giant 6-foot bubbles bouncing into each other at a concert?
We're already doing that. Yes, we're already. Have you seen the Flaming Lips doing their
I have, yeah. Very funny.
That's a real thing, but not practical on a large scale, and that's been the concern.
No.
For a lot of, there are concerts out there. There are outdoor, distanced, small artists playing, both drive-ins and spaced out picnic. There was the venue in Newcastle that did the raised platforms at the football stadium. So some things have been done, but what the challenge was that those were not able to scale to the economy of what's needed or what is expected for a major touring musician or band. So yeah, I do think we'll go back to it this week. Ticketmaster and Live Nation talked about integrating technology that takes into account your vaccine status or recent COVID test before you can enter a show, which of course made people either ecstatic because they're like, we're gonna get to go to shows soon, or furious because they don't want their health and personal information tracked in such a way. So there are certainly hurdles to overcome there. Yeah, the industry is really built on the economy of filling every seat. So there are some challenges to overcome to really put these major tours back on the road, but I don't see it stopping. I think it's a large industry. I think many people feel very passionately about live music because there's something that you can't replicate aside from seeing one of your favorite artists on stage in person with thousands of other fans right next to you. Maybe it'll be like the Japanese roller coaster thing where you scream inside your heart instead of screaming. Are you familiar with that one? There was a sign at a Japanese amusement park where you had to wear a mask, but they told you instead of screaming to scream inside your heart. Probably an awful translation, but we'll have the fans screaming inside their heart instead of screaming out loud. There are, it'll be different, and it'll probably feel weird, and it'll probably feel a little bit riskier than you ever imagined it would. We all could have caught influenza at a show, but it wasn't quite the same, didn't have that same gravitas as it does when you enter a crowd now. So I think it has to come back. It will come back, and we'll be safe, but it's just hard to see exactly the steps in the timeline for when that'll happen.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the world unfolds and opens up to normality as we knew it. there's these crazy little pods. I don't know if you've seen these either, but they're like a plastic thing that sits on your head. It's a giant, great big dome with a clear plastic thing with a ventilator in it. Maybe that's the wave of the future for concerts. I don't know.
Yeah, there are so many things, and we're 8 months into it, but that's 8 months of, we've learned so much about how the virus is transmitted and how to handle it, and what safe behavior is and isn't. It doesn't mean we've all adjusted our behaviors, unfortunately, but the amount of things that we'll learn over the next 6 months are also going to, it's just, the knowledge is growing exponentially. So I try to trust science and trust the people who are there working to keep us as safe as possible.
Yeah, and they're working diligently to move this as far in the past as possible and as fast as possible. So, hopefully within the next year or so, we can resolve this slowly and figure it all out. But so how, if somebody wanted to support you guys just in the basic fashion, how would they go about that? What would be a good step for your average person to be able to go, hey, that's a brilliant message, like to get involved? How would they do it?
Absolutely. So reverb.org is our website. There is some confusion since the name Reverb came before there's a for-profit that sells used musician gear at reverb.com, but reverb.org is our website where you can learn more about what we do. There are opportunities to lend your voice to causes there as well. There's an opportunity to donate. We love when people will connect with us on social media, all the basics, the Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, as a way to learn more about what we are doing. And then when concerts resume, we have volunteer opportunities at every show, because we find the most effective communication is when a fan is talking to another fan, and a fan can look at you and say that, like, Dave Matthews asked us to be here tonight, which is true, to tell you about this, and they'd like you to do this small thing right now. Pledge to use less power in your day by unplugging all your devices when you're not using them. Great. And so those fan volunteer opportunities, I think when things start to pick up and live music returns, it's going to happen fast, and there'll be a lot of opportunity, a lot of need really quickly. So we'd love to have people connected with us on social media, our email list, so that they can volunteer in the future.
Well, thank you, Lara. Really appreciate you taking the time out to join us today. That's great stuff that you guys are doing. And for anybody that's interested, I'll also put the links down in all the various link sections so people could actually go and check you guys out and see what you're up to. So thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for talking.
Counting Coral relies on public support. If you would like to donate to Counting Coral and help out with the coral crisis, please see the link in the comments section if you are on YouTube, link in the bio if you're on Instagram, link in the post section if you're on Facebook or LinkedIn. The best way to follow us for Counting Coral Chats is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell. When you hit the bell, you will be notified every time we post new content. We are always looking for people to join us in one of our chats. If you are interested in what we do and you would like to be on our show, you can email us at connect@countingcoral.com.